Hi, I'm Dale Simmons, Senior Brand Manager at Purdy Life Health Products. I'm out in Calgary, Alberta at District Ventures with our Senior Director of Sales and Brand Management, Mike Roberts. We get to spend a few hours talking to some amazing entrepreneurs. The District Ventures program, founded in 2015 by Arlene Dickinson, does an amazing job providing mentorship and connections to early stage entrepreneurs in both the health and wellness and food and beverage categories. The goal is to get them up to speed and bring them to the next level as quickly as possible. What we found after signing and partnering with 10 vendors that have been through this program, after listening to some of their challenges and questions and concerns, the thought process was, I think we would have more value add to insert ourselves into the process earlier for distribution and any questions they'd have, so that can help get them to the next level. Thus, this relationship was born. We're very excited this afternoon to have a great presentation and a great talk. Thanks, to District Ventures for having us out here. Thanks for all of you, for attending. And we already know some people in this room, and hopefully we'll get to know the rest of you as well. So the focus of this discussion, and we like to make sure we keep this as a discussion. We're definitely not here to talk at anyone. We're here to talk with people. We'd like this to kind of flow the way a traditional discussion, at least at Purdy Life, goes with a potential new vendor and a distributor. So we'd like this to be as interactive as possible. So please, if you have any questions at any point or comments or concerns, please give them to us and let's talk through it, because trust me, you may forget at some point. So, and for those of you who've already been through this discussion, then hopefully it'll sound the same twice, and, and you'll feel like you've made the right choice all over again. So we'll go through some of the agenda. So introductions, we've already been introduced. Alex did. So I'm Senior Brand Manager at Purdy Life. I've been there for 7.5 years. Also as a former retailer, so I ran 8 health food stores in the GTA, Greater Toronto area, for about 12 years with 2 other partners. So I have a pretty good understanding of what our customers want, and a unique understanding on this end of what vendors want and brokers want. So it's quite interesting. And actually, well, we'll skip ahead for the slide. Mike, you might as well introduce yourself.
Sure. So I've been with Purdy Life for 12 years. Prior to that, I actually started my career with Loblaws in the supply chain group there. Worked for another natural product distributor, a competitor of ours actually, for a few years. Worked outside of the health food industry for a potato chip company, which was interesting. And then been at Purdy for 12 years. So I started out managing our purchasing department. I was the general manager of a contract manufacturing plant that we owned that produced capsules and tablets for about 3 years. And then we sold off that division. I moved back to our head office, managing purchasing and vendor relations. And about 4 years ago, moved over to the sales side of things. So manage our sales team, brand management team, customer service, and our trade marketing group.
So hopefully we'll give you a pretty broad spectrum of topics that can come up through onboarding a vendor, all the way through how to work with a distributor that has a sales force and how best to leverage those things. So the topics we'll be going through, we'll go through a lot of things today. Why choose a distributor? Is a distributor right for you? To try to pick which would be the best fit for both. It should be a partnership. Financial considerations, and there are a lot. And that's something that we'll really focus on today. Distributor requirements, things that they may need of you, and also vice versa. This will help leverage effective sales strategies through a distributor. And then we'll talk about brokers as well. That is also a very important piece of this. And then Q&A, I'd like to think the Q&A will actually happen as we go through all of this. So again, don't be afraid to ask.
Purdy Life has been around since 1984. It was founded by a husband and wife, David and Elise Chapman, in Acton, Ontario. That's a small little town northwest of Toronto. They decided to retire and sold the business almost 10 years ago now. They actually sold it to Synopta, which is a large billion-dollar publicly traded corporation. They owned us for about 5 years, and then they decided to sell off all their distribution businesses and just focus on being a natural and organic ingredient supplier. So they were actually owned UNFI before UNFI bought those distribution businesses from them in Canada. They also owned us. So when they sold us, our current president and CEO, Matthew James, bought the company with the backing of Banyan Capital Group, so a financial investment company. We're about 126 employees across Canada. We have our main head office in Acton. Our Eastern Distribution Center is located there as well. We also have a distribution center located in Vancouver to service the West. We have a sales team that spans from Vancouver Island all the way up to Halifax. About 50% of what we do is in the health and beauty category, 30% supplements, and the balance being food. So we don't do any refrigerated or frozen yet. but those are the categories that we cover. Quickly run through our core values here. This is how we run our business day to day. Collaboration, operational excellence, mutual respect, integrity, and transparency. We live these core values both inside our organization and out with all of our business partners, our vendors, brokers, and retailers. And our brand promise is easy to do business with. So that's something that it's awesome to hear our employees talking about internally, holding each other accountable to that. Is it making it us easy to do business with our vendors? Is it making it easy to do business with our retailers? But also internally, when there's processes or procedures that are being looked at, people will hold departments accountable if they're someone else's internal customer to that brand promise. So it's something we live by day to day. Our mission statement is there. I won't read that for you, but that's what we stand for.
These are the brands that we are currently working with period of life. Either we are already currently selling products or we're going through the whole onboarding process. So by the time we got to vendor number, I think 10, a light finally went on in my head and I said, well, wait a minute. After a few years of hearing a lot of questions and concerns and fears and seeing some things that probably could be tweaked a little bit with the relationship with a distributor and an entrepreneur, I kind of thought, well, maybe if we inserted ourselves earlier on in the process, that could help people get the information that they knew or needed to know, because you don't know what you need to know until you actually know it. So if we can get that to you earlier, that would save time. And in fact, Wendy actually had facilitated this connection, so thank you so much for that. But in the email she had sent to Alex said, you know what, if he would have saved me 2 years just by having that conversation 2 years ago. So thank you so much for that. But all of that kind of makes sense. So that's how we got here. So hopefully we can provide a lot of you some insights into working with a distributor. And to Mike's point, we have 10 brands now, and there will be more. But based on our distribution realities, we've done our homework on all of you, by the way. So there are certain brands that we couldn't distribute right now, but what we don't want you to think is, well, this isn't for me then. Quite the opposite. So what we want to focus on is what you'll need to know with any distributor.
Break it right down. A distributor's role is to move boxes. That's what we do. That's what any distributor does. There's all kinds of different value-added things that we offer, that other distributors offer, but really at the end of the day, our job is to move boxes, and our real strength is our distribution reach and all of the different channels that we can provide product to. Really, you guys play an important role in building your brand and growing your brand and understanding the limitations and also the benefits of being with a distributor will be very important. So that's what we're going to get into next.
If you can leverage what we or any distributor does well, you're increasing your chances to succeed. If you do not, then that's going to make things much, much more challenging. So if we can go to the next slide.
So why use a distributor? There's many different reasons why that might happen. Probably the simplest reason is it provides instant access to thousands of retail chains across Canada. So we supply over 2,000 health food stores across the country, as well as we supply into large food drug mass accounts like Loblaw, Shoppers Drug Mart, those kinds of places, as well as other distributors. So instead of a retailer needing to set up an account with you, and you needing to set up an account with hundreds of retailers to get your product in there, they would already have an account with us or another distributor. So being listed with a distributor makes it easier for a retailer to pull your brand from them because all of that work's already set up. It also makes it easier for you to do business because the distributor is handling that receivable. So the distributor places a PO to you, you ship the goods to them, you collect the money. It's that one point, that one transaction, and then the distributor is worrying about collecting the money and doing all those transactions with the hundreds or thousands of different retailers that are out there. So it can make that admin work and that accounting work much simpler on your side of things.
A lot of retailers, most retailers, big or small, regardless of the side, are preferring to work through distributors. So more than likely at some point you'll be, through your choice or otherwise, be steered towards saying, we will do this if you work with a distributor, here's the people we prefer to work with. So either way, it will be coming for you at some point.
We have many retailers come to us and they say there's brands that they see out there that they want to list, but they don't want to be bothered to bring it in direct. So they'll refer the brand to us, and then we have a process that we go through to get the brand listed with us. And that's just a requirement for that retailer because they don't want to have another shipment showing up at their door. They don't want to have to place another PO. With a distributor, they can order hundreds of items all at one time, and it's one order, one payable, one receipt at their back door. It makes it much easier for them. Is there any other questions on this slide or why you think you might need or not need a distributor.
Just your last point there about retailers that want distributors on board, so they're saying they can provide that extra service, yet they're probably not willing to take that off their percentage.
The retailer's margin would not change whether it's coming through
So
us
it is a
or
benefit to them,
going direct.
Who's willing to pay for it, and often it comes out of the manufacturer's cut, right, to pay for
Correct,
it.
and that's actually something we're going to talk about in a couple slides is what it costs to do business through a distributor and being prepared for that so your costing model can be set up correctly. Now, in a brand's infancy and as they grow, it's the retailer doesn't want to have to order smaller amounts and it's easier for them to pull through a distributor, but as you grow and get bigger, then the opposite happens and the retailer wants to go direct to the brand so that they can get that extra margin and not have to pay potentially a higher price because that they know that the distributor's margin is in there. Some brands will decide to push back and say, no, they don't want to have lower pricing. It's kind of same pricing for everyone, whether the retailer goes direct or they go through a distributor, they say pay the same price. And in some cases, they may discount it 5 or 10% for the retailer to get it, so it's not a significant disparity in there. But for sure, the things flip as brands grow, and that's where we always want to have a constant influx of new brands coming in, because we know on the other end there's brands as they grow and get to a certain point that we'll lose that business because especially the larger retailers will pressure them to go direct.
No, but to that point, and that's a very good question. That I mean, ultimately, if your business, any business, gets to where it needs to go, you keep growing, you have more customers. Your costs for logistics are going to keep going up and up and up. So ultimately, you're not just giving up something that you could have saved in the first place. At every turn, as any business grows, you're going to be losing margin. And logistics is a big one. To have to ship, let's say $300 halfway across the country, you don't have to worry about that, right? So your orders can go to a couple of distribution centers, and then that part is off your books.
These are the things that we would suggest that you might want to look into when you're considering a distributor. What's their area of focus? So as I mentioned, we play in health and beauty, food and supplements, primarily dry grocery items. We don't do fresh or frozen. So obviously if your product is frozen, you need to find a distributor that has those capabilities, or if it's refrigerated, same thing. And there is distributors out there that specialize in sports nutrition, so bodybuilding supplement type things. There's distributors that specialize in that, as well as a variety of other things. So there's over 20 different distributors in Canada. There's lots of options out there, and they all have their own niche that they would play within.
Yeah, the next piece is big. Well, I think they're all big, but are they national? And then what is truly national? What does national mean for Purity Life? And I think most people would assume that for you means is do you offer the entire country access to this brand X? So as Mike mentioned, we're in over 2,000 stores in Canada. We're basically almost 100% of the health food market. And we offer, not to talk about purity, but we're going to have to at some point, because it's important to know. So we offer next day delivery to about 80% of the country, and all they have to do is order $350 or more. We pay the freight, and food being an exception, we ship in units. At Purity, if a customer, and one of our DCs is in Vancouver, our warehouses, the other one is in Acton, about an hour northwest of Toronto. So if someone in Winnipeg got their order in at 11 a.m. this morning, Eastern Standard out in Toronto, that order would ship today, they'll get it tomorrow. So that is what we deem to be national. So how many people pull from you? So you want to make sure that if any retailer wants your brand, there's a high likelihood that they can get it from the distributor, their distributor of choice. Now you can also have distributors that do not compete against each other, even though that can happen and does happen. But you can also have distributors in different channels. Part of our focus is, one, being transparent, but two, we view distribution as a partnership, equal partnership. So the last thing we want to do is hold anyone's business back. So if they have access to a channel where we don't distribute, the last thing we want to do is, please find, if you have a distributor there that you think can get that done for you, then do it. So don't ever think that, depends on the distributor. We don't need true exclusivity and we demand your brand forever. That's not the way to partner. Units and cases, which is a big thing, or can be. So as I touched on, we ship, other than food, we ship by the unit, and there's certain exceptions, which keeps our smaller, I mean, we sell to some health food stores that are the size of this room, so they don't want to order everything in cases. With the food we carry, about 95% of that goes out by the case. But the unit thing is, depending on your brand, can be an important thing to consider. Some distributors just sell only by the case. Do they have exclusive supply agreements with larger retailers, i.e. Whole Foods? Do you want to touch on that one?
Sure. So Whole Foods leverages their size in the US for their business in Canada here. So the business in Canada is decent. It's not near the size that it is in the US, but there's potential here. So for us, we are the exclusive supplier to the whole body section in their stores. And then another example, UNFI would be their primary supplier in the food, for all food items in the East. In the West, it's Horizon. So depending what category you're in, that might influence what distributor you want to go with, because us being the primary in the whole body section, that allows us to help brands get listed in there much more easily, and Whole Foods is more inclined to list products through us because we're that preferred supplier. So it's not to say they don't order things from other distributors or potentially even direct, depending what it is, but that's something that can really help you leverage getting your product listed if there is those preferred supply agreements in place.
Large retailers, if they have their own distribution centers, are you distributing to those distribution centers then? So is it just some companies?
Both.
That,
There's some where we would be distributing to their DC, and there's other where we would go DSD, direct to store. So it depends on what that retailer wants and how much room they have in their warehouse. They might not have any slots left in their warehouse, so they'll want us to ship direct to store.
And it could also be a velocity story. It could also be a velocity thing as well. If it's a larger brand with higher velocity to the DCs, if it's a newer brand, that's one of the benefits of using a distributor as opposed to going direct, is they can put in an order for 12 units or a case or 2 cases with their overall order and get that inventory. Do they have their own sales reps? I'll start with this one. I'll hand it over to sales. But that is something that anyone that has spoken with me or spoken with us, but normally you get me first. That goes back to the slide with the big yellow thing on it about shared expectations. So the more you understand what a distributor that's doing his job properly, once you understand what their strengths are, that helps you figure out what your strengths need to be, and maybe you need someone else in there. And we'll cover our broker as well. So essentially, to go back to the earlier slide, essentially what we do is logistics is what we do best. We ship boxes. We do offer a lot of other services as well, but we always start off on that level, on the lowest rung of excellence, I like to say. But then we bring you up, so I feel better about things. So it's not that you get no support from Purity. So do you want to talk about? Well, I'll cover that. We have 15 reps out in the field, 3 inside sales reps, 3 key account managers, 3 regional managers, a national sales manager, and a senior director of sales. But with all those sales reps with 300 brands and over 9,300 SKUs, we're really not out there selling any one specific brand. What we're out there selling is us and what we do. Now, when I say us, you can actually use that lens through any distributor. Unless they only have about 15 or 20 brands, I'm being facetious, they will not have time. They will fail you. We will fail you if you're expecting us to be the ones out there 5 months into a relationship, being the one out there and God knows where, talking about your brand. And it doesn't mean you won't get support, but it's always a modified level of support. And we need that shared kind of expectation. So
I think you covered it. There is some distributors that will only list exclusive lines through them, and they'll promise a higher level of support. So by exclusive, it means you're only with that distributor, and based on your agreement with them, they will not let you go with anyone else. In exchange for that, they may promise you a higher level of support from their sales team. Oftentimes, though, those distributors, they still have a whack load of brands. So it's difficult for their salespeople to talk about your brand on every single sales call. And they may not have quite the same reach that a national distributor might have. That being said, us or other distributors, you can certainly leverage their sales force in many different ways. Whether they'll even allow you to train their reps, some distributors won't. We do, and that's a great way that if you can get the distributor rep to be passionate about your brand, get samples to them, have them try it if they like it, then that's a way that you can help to better leverage them to talk about your brand more. But with over 300 brands that we have, if we use UNFI as an example, they've got way more brands than that. Their reps they're not going to be able to talk about your brand all the time. So that's where you need to make sure that you have a plan in place for that added level of sales support, whether it's you or a broker or some other way to do that. Yeah. I think it's important that the expectations are clear between the brand and the distributor up front of what that level of support is going to look like, so there isn't any surprises or disappointments in the future.
And just to add on to Mike's point about exclusivity, there are some distributors that will only sell exclusive brands. They will not take shared brands, and that's just their focus. So we do have exclusive brands at Purity, and we have some that are non-exclusive as well. So we do offer that. So with an exclusive brand, what are the benefits as to being a shared or exclusive? The challenge we can face, or any distributor can face with shared brands, is the more competition there is out there for selling the same product. Ultimately, it then becomes down to certain factors. Who do they prefer to buy from? Who do they like to buy from? Ultimately, then what can be the deciding factor is price. And that creates its own set of challenges and its own set of frustrations with different distributors. And sometimes reps can say, you know what, I know if I get this listed somewhere, I know a month from now, that distributor who only sells on price will come steal the business. So you know what? Hands off. So ultimately, with a distributor, what you're getting is points of distribution. Okay, just like real estate, they're not making any more land. If your distributor has really good coverage, they're not making any more stores. So if people want to buy from that distributor, you've got that point solved. You've got that locked down. So then the key is, how do you leverage that? How do you get people to order from that distributor? And we'll touch on that as we go further, but I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you. Now, in this specific case, one I would say to everyone, Susie is the perfect example of a vendor who is supremely motivated to build her brand. So that is number one. The success she's having via Purity, and thank you very much for all of everything that you're doing, by the way.
5 stores in 4 weeks.
So that is awesome.
30 doors.
So now remember that to get any rep's attention with 300 brands wanting attention, so how do you do that? And maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's relevant with that statement. You need to have a point of difference. You really, really do. If you're doing something that everyone else is doing, that's going to be a challenge. I don't mind telling you that after seeing the thousands of brands that I see every year, I'm so jaded, it's not even funny. And I mean that for the right reason. So to get my attention, you better have something different. You really better. So what Susie has done, one, her products are amazing. They taste great. So everyone went nuts when they tried them. Right away, there's attention. All right, so she has a different product, a great value statement, pretty high chance of success. So when you contact that rep out west, said, can I come out? They don't say that to all 300 brands. Like, no, I don't, because I don't think everyone's going to want it. In your case, it was a no-brainer. Yeah, get out here. Let's do this. So, but again, that's what you're bringing to the table. So it is a partnership, and it is equal. We're both in this together. You can't just drop your products off to any distributor and think, I've done it. They're going to do it from here. We will, or anyone will fail you.
So one point of contact at the distributor. There's some companies that own regional distributors, so they may be national, but you might have to deal with 3 or 4 different people across the country to actually get your product into their different locations. So that one point of contact might make it easier for you. Something what you need to decide whether it's important or not. Sales reporting. So there's varying level of information sharing out there amongst distributors. We share everything. We have monthly reports that go out that show how much inventory you have in both our warehouses, how long it's been there, fill rates. We show every single unit that you sold in that month to every single ship to that it went to. And then a monthly ACV report was essentially a gap report. And then weekly you would get any deduction reports. So if there was ongoing program fees or any cost of doing business with a retailer, you would see that on a weekly basis. I think that's an important question to ask going in, is what level of information are they going to share with you?
Any distributor should be more than happy to share all of their information with you, and if they don't, you should be asking why. And to Mike's point, with our reports, we gift wrap all of our best. Our gap report has our top 600 customers, which is 80% of our business, and where that vendor's products are placed, and we go by store name, store address, store postal code, and phone number. So you can see by giving that report in one fell swoop, here's our best customers, go nuts, you don't really need this anymore unless. So we do that for a reason though. The only way to truly build your business is to know exactly where your products are going and where they're not going. And that's also a trust factor as well. If a distributor doesn't want to share that with you, there can't be that much trust. So we choose to trust our vendors. We choose to believe in partnerships. And we believe if you put it out there, you get it back. But also that goes with us, just one sec, that when we're looking for these partnerships, that is a big piece of this, is their relations with their person to person.
Minimum order quantities, we touched on what ours were. I guess that's just for you to be aware of what are the distributor order requirements and lead time. So how easy is it for a retailer to order from that distributor if you're going to go with them? If their minimum's $2,000 and it's not going to get to the store for 2 weeks, that might not be ideal for you. Maybe it is, depending on your product, but something to be aware of how easy is it for the retailer to actually get your product from whatever distributor you choose. Exclusive multiple distributors we already talked about. And then do they distribute other like products or even competing brands? So this is one where we've talked to brands before where we already list their direct competitor and they might be apprehensive to come with us because of that, because they're worried that maybe that brand's going to get attention over theirs. Our argument back to that and what we've proven to be successful is as a distributor, if we can represent a category or even a portion of a category, it's actually better for everyone. It's like car dealerships, they all are in the same street, and overall that's better for everyone than the one guy that might be out in the middle of nowhere on his own. So in the health and beauty category, we have probably 90% of the brands. When you walk into a health food store, we distribute almost all of those, and it allows us to go in and work with the store and manage that whole category, and then the brands that are involved in that can grow with it. So you need to decide for yourself if you think it's an issue that a distributor might have a competing brand for you, but we found that typically both brands end up being more successful by there being that one point of contact. Even for the store, likely they're right beside each other on the store shelf, so it's easier for the store to order both of them together if they're coming from the same spot, as opposed to maybe they order your brand from us and the competing brand from someone else. They might forget to go back and do that order, or if it's not as easy to get it from whoever that other distributor is, it could cause problems for them. So typically, I would say in my experience, that's not an issue, but it's something to be aware of for sure. And then the reputation within the industry. So I would strongly suggest do a reference check. Call vendors that are already being distributed by that distributor and ask them questions about how they find doing business with them, as well as, and especially on the retail side of things. You want to make sure that retailers are going to want to order your product from that distributor. So make some phone calls and ask some questions and just make sure that it is going to be the right fit for your brand. So financial costs of working with a distributor, we talked about this a little bit already. For us, it's 26%. It can range anywhere from 15 to 35, again, depending on what the expectations are of that distributor and what they're providing for you. So those distributors, they would have only exclusive brands and they say they're going to provide a higher level of service. The margin they're going to require is probably going to be more like 35% because they've got added costs of doing business with your brand and selling it. And then, again, depending on the distributor, they may or may not take more or less margin. But it's something that is really important for, I think, for you to understand is maybe you're not at the point where you want or need a distributor now, but 2 or 3 years from now, if you do need a distributor, it's important to account for those costs now. Otherwise, you can really disrupt your pricing out in the market. If your current wholesale prices going direct don't allow for a distributor to be built in there for you to have enough margin left to continue to build and market your brand, then you're gonna have to do price adjustments later, and that can really cause frustration with the retailers if all of a sudden you need to put through a 26% price increase because you haven't accounted for having a distributor in place. So if that's something where you think you may need to go, if that's a route that your brand may end up being on down the road, then would highly recommend try and build that margin into your product now, or at least a good chunk of it, so that the pricing doesn't have to be disrupted later. It's important to make sure that you have enough margin left over after accounting for a distributor and whatever other costs you have to be able to market and build your brand. Just because you get signed up with us or any other distributor, it opens up this huge, massive distribution channel. But if you don't have any marketing dollars left to be able to market your product to the consumer, so you can get that pull off the shelf, it doesn't matter how many doors we get it in. If the consumer's not aware of it because you don't have the dollars left to promote it, then you're likely going to run into problems.
Or even things like hiring a broker as well, things like that.
Or brokers.
Yeah. So ultimately, we always say you need to be as greedy as we use the term greedy, as greedy as possible on the front end of selling your brands to make sure that you can account for distribution and promotions. As your brand grows, we touched on that. At every turn, as your brand goes, which is ultimately what you want it to do, you'll be losing margin. And what you don't want, and we've seen it quite a few times where a vendor gets to the point where they're doing $600,000, $700,000 and they're not making any money. And they're saying, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense. It's because on the front end, they didn't get the costing done right. So that is a big, big, big piece.
This is questions that we ask of vendors when they come to us. So some of you would have seen this already. Some of it's pretty simple stuff that you would already know being in Canada. Having vendors approach us from all over the world, they're not always necessarily aware of what the labeling laws are here or different regulations as far as products needing NPN or cosmetic notification. So these are questions that we'll ask vendors as they approach us to want to be distributed through us. So kind of the key things in here is essentially, is your product legally able to be sold in Canada, which I would hope, given you're all from here, it is. But actually there's many that are not.
It's like a silly question. We see it. Yeah.
And then do you have the right regulations in place? So for us in our industry, the biggest one would be an NPN. Depending what your product is, maybe a medical device license. But if your product requires an NPN and you don't have it, we're not going to list it and distribute it. So we need to make sure that all those regulatory requirements are in place ahead of time. Some other key ones, special storage shipping condition. We don't ship refrigerated or frozen, so we want to know if your product requires that. It's a no-go right from the start. Or is there special storage conditions just within both of our warehouses are air conditioned, so it's not a problem in the summer. The warehouse isn't getting up to 50 degrees when it's super hot. Shelf life, expiry dates. For us to turn products that are less than 6 months expiry dating is pretty difficult. There's other distributors that would specialize in fresh products that are turning stuff all the time. They would do produce where they're turning it every day. So that's something that you likely will get asked. Return and inventory balancing.
Yeah, so that's always going to be a piece of any equation is product not selling, which is why you want to make sure you're getting very transparent reporting from your distributors so there are no surprises. We hate surprises. The last thing you want to know here is have a distributor say, surprise, here's $10,000 worth of inventory you didn't know we had. We don't want it. You're taking it back.
What retail channels are you targeting? Again, these are questions the distributor would ask, but also questions you should hope they're asking and know yourself, because is it a good fit? If it's the health food channel or the food drug mass channel, do they even supply Walmart and Loblaws or Shoppers if that's where you want to be? Some distributors don't supply to those. Customers, your Canadian marketing budget, what are your annual sales volume goals? For us, we just want to know that you do have something available to support the brand, because if we go through the effort of getting it on the shelf and working together to do that, we want to make sure that you're planning to get that pull off the shelf. And then the annual sales goals, just again, for us to know that, yeah, you've got a plan in place and you have a target that you're wanting to reach towards, and it's
realistic goal.
Yeah.
Realistic. So
Whole Foods has a whole ingredient list of what's acceptable and what's not. So for us to sell into Whole Foods, that's something that would be important. It doesn't mean we wouldn't necessarily list your product, but it's something that would be good to know ahead of time if it is acceptable for Whole Foods, and that list is available on their website. Just to make sure the right amount of liabilities insurance is in place. And then testers or samples for your products. Again, if it's appropriate, do you have that budget and that support in place? Because especially health and beauty products, there needs to be testers at the store level for them to try it. Food products, the reps or the buyer in the store is going to want to try it. So do you have those samples available to support your brand? And then what are your lead times and minimum order quantities, just to make sure that it fits with the distributor model as well? These are questions we typically ask, like I said, but I think this is probably good questions for you guys to ask of a potential distributor as well, if they're not asking you, just to make sure that it's a good fit. So effective sales strategies through a distributor. Some of this we've touched on, some of it will be new. So once your product's listed with a distributor, they'll all have different marketing tools available for you. For us, our biggest selling tool is still our catalog, and then advertising within our catalog. So it's something that gets sent out every 2 months to over 2,000 retailers across the country. It's a physical paper book. As awful as that sounds nowadays, there's still majority of our customers want that physical copy of it, even though we've made it available electronically 10 different ways. A lot of them still want it, that paper copy. So advertising in there is a big way to get retailers to notice your brand and your product, and that would be retailer-specific advertisement, I would suggest, as opposed to a consumer advertisement. So what is the benefit for the retailer why should they have your product on their shelf as opposed to a consumer-based one? That's a big tool for us. Monthly promotions, we talked about that before. Depending on the brand and how they want to market their product, some brands have no discounts. That's the strategy that they've taken, and they never discount their brand. I would say that's rare. The majority of brands will have some sort of promotional calendar where different categories within their brand or the entire brand will be discounted for certain months of the year. So the 2 trade show months are pretty typical. And then oftentimes brands will have 2 other months where they'll discount their product as well. And then, like I said, those can range anywhere from 5 to 30%. BIF programs for sales reps. So this is something, again, you might want to ask a distributor if it's something that you're able to do to help motivate the reps to sell your brand. It's something that we support. So, and there's all different kinds of ways that those can be structured. It can be year over year sales increase. So if the rep increases their sales by 10%, they get $100 or whatever makes sense. New brands coming in, it's typically more of a distribution drive. So with our reporting, we're able to very quickly and easily measure within each sales rep's territory how many units they've sold and where they've sold it to. So we can take a baseline at October 1st, and you want to run a spiff to the end of the year. So over the course of those months, every new distribution point they might get $1 or $5 or 50 cents or whatever it is. Again, it depends on the value of your product and the margin that you have to support that. And then that can motivate our reps to want to go out and get those points of distribution for you. And then displays, giveaways, contests. So there can be contests for our reps, contests for the retailers to maybe the best display wins a cash prize or a trip or something. Again, there's been all kinds of different things that vendors have done in the past to help support either at the wholesale level and the retail level to motivate them to bring your product in. And then this last line here we've touched on already. Really the easiest way to get your product listed at a retailer is to have a consumer coming in asking for it and wanting to get it. The retailer knows there's that demand and they see value in having it on their shelf. Then they're going to want to bring it in, and that's really the brand owner's job, is to help create that consumer demand. So we mentioned a broker earlier. A lot of our most successful brands, not necessarily all, but a lot of our top brands have a broker in place, and it's really a 3-pronged approach of us, the brand owner supporting their brand strongly, and then having that broker relationship in place. So there's a bunch of different brokers out there. Again, some are national, some are more regional based. Some will have more feet on the street than others. Some might more specialize in helping you on the brand management side of things. Some will be more specialized on having those feet out in the street and actually selling your brand. And that's really what the broker does, is adds that extra level of sales support for you. So likely it would be very expensive to have your own sales force of 10 or 15 people across the country. By leveraging a broker, there's a cost to you of typically 5 to 10%, but you're able to leverage their sales force. So they, again, depending on the broker, they'll have people out there. So they'll be in there selling your brand along with whatever other brands they represent. And our reps will be out there selling your brand as well. We already kind of touched about all of that, but that broker's that higher level of support, and you're paying them to sell your brand. So that's where you have really a lot more leverage and can apply a lot more pressure, because you're giving them that 5% to sell your brand. If from month to month you see the sales aren't increasing, then that's where something's wrong and you need to have a conversation and fix it, because that's really what their role is. And we partner really well with all of the broker reps out there. So that's where I said it's that 3-pronged approach where everyone's working together and supporting the brand that we've seen the most success. So broker reps will go in and set up programs and plans with a retailer, and they'll loop all our rep in so that we can make sure we have inventory and all of that administrative work. If you're paying for a flyer ad or something, all that flows through us and back to you. So that's where our rep needs to be kept in the loop. And that can be very successful. But again, it's an extra cost to you. So you need to decide if you have the margin for it and find the right partner. And again, I would suggest we can get all of you a copy of our catalog if you want. But within the front of our catalog, we list all the distributors or all of the brokers that we work with. And I would suggest calling them and interviewing them and seeing if they're the right fit for you. Because like I said, they specialize in different things in different categories. There is national and regional brokers too. So again, depending on where you're at in the stage of growing your brand, it may make sense to have a regional broker, or some of the larger brokers may not be interested in working with you until you get to be a certain size, and you might be forced to have to go with 2 smaller regional people, depending on whether the broker's interested in taking on your line or not. This is what I would suggest when you're looking into one, is how many brands do they have? Again, what do retailers and other vendors think of them? If you look through our catalog, you can see other vendors that are in there. I can give you contact information if you want to do that.
We've covered most of the rest of that, other than do they have competing brands? And it is different for a distributor to provide choice as opposed to a broker, where that can be. Now, some will just flat out say there's a conflict and we can't do it. Others may do it, so that's something that you then have to ask. Well, if you have brand X and it's that successful, do I even have a shot?
Some of the larger brokers would give the same spiel that I did earlier of, yeah, we have 6 other competing brands, but we manage this whole category, so yeah, we can take on your brand and it will work. Some brokers, like Dale said, they already have a competing brand. That brand will not let them take on your brand, otherwise they'll stop working with them. So they're kind of forced by the contracts that they might already have in place that they can't even do anything with you.
Yes, that happens.
Yeah. I think that's it as far as our formal presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you.